Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the IWE YouTube channel. In sponsorship, participation of sorts with Wrestle Plug. I'm, of course, Aeron, the host of Wrestle Plug. And for this very special pre-show, we're going to be running down IWE Valentine Violence, which takes place Saturday, 19th of February at the Writtle Sports and Leisure Centre in Chelmsford, Essex. Of course, I'm not going to talk about it alone. If you follow CWP, and if you follow a number of excellent promotions in the United Kingdom as pertains to independent wrestling, you'll recognize the man to my side. He is, of course, the magical one himself, the masterful MC that is Martin Rowe. Welcome back, sir.
It's great. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited because it's my first show of the year and it's my debut at Independent Wrestling Elite. So yeah, let's start the year with a bang, shall we?
Yes, indeed. 6 matches on this card. 6 very impressive looking matches. Another company that kind of flies under the radar, may not necessarily get the credit it deserves. Some people might argue that they're not helping themselves, but they've certainly gone all out with the promotion for this one. And we start with what is most likely going to be one of the most charismatic and, shall we say, more vocal matches on the card, as Danny Disorder, who represents ACW based out of Poole in the Bournemouth region, will be facing the Knobs member Ebenezer, the full-time geezer. There's plenty to talk about here, isn't there?
Now, for anyone who's been following the Wrestle Talk, the Wrestle Talk podcast, the Wrestle Plug podcast, you'll be aware that we're big fans of Knobs. We love all the things that the Knobs stand for, and Ebenezer the Geezer is one of our absolute favorite people in the world. He's a dodgy dealer. Sometimes he's a good guy, sometimes he's a bad guy, but he's always got that winning mentality.
Yeah, I like the fact you mentioned winning mentality. It should be worth mentioning as well. Of course, Ebenezer the Geezer, co-owner of the Win brand. The Win brand will also be in the house selling a few of their select merchandise, I believe. Just a small selection of T-shirts and hats. But Ebenezer the Geezer, you'll probably fall in love with him as a character, ladies and gentlemen, especially as he's facing the self-proclaimed hardest man in Bournemouth, which is kind of like being... I don't know, there's many analogies you could make, but Frankie Boyle's joke about being the best looking man in the Burns unit kind of comes to mind when we speak of that. But less said about that, the better, to be fair. That being said, he does have credentials, Danny Disorder. But like I said, the Win brand, the winning mentality that is, of course, Ebenezer the Geezer will be in the house, not just to wrestle, but also to show off the brand too, the big W that he loves to show. So make sure you check that out as well. But as far as this match goes, very fascinating because Ebenezer the Geezer always has the upper hand. He's always the character. He's got the mind games. He's got the psychology. But Danny Disorder is just as nefarious, just as much of a bit of a git as Ebenezer the Geezer is, in different ways. So I'm curious. Do you think this might be the hurdle that Ebenezer the Geezer could struggle with?
I think, you know, to quote a great man, this is not going to be a Jack Briscoe, Dory Funk Jr. catch can classic. This one's going to be bowling shoe ugly, as they say, because, you know, it's two guys. Yeah, they've got some great skills. I mean, Ebenezer the Geezer has shown off some remarkable high flying ability, but I think this is going to be a Weatherspoons pub car park brawl. That's what this one's going to be.
Yeah, this does feel like a $3.99 plate of halloumi fries. And I thoroughly expect these two men to slap the taste out of each other. It could be very physical. There's been quite a few war words already. I have it on good authority that Ebenezer the Geezer has threatened to teabag one Danny Disorder should he have the opportunity. Yeah, if you're looking for class, ladies and gentlemen, then you're probably not in the right department if you are in the Isle of Knobs. It's as simple as that. They like to be dirty, they like to be greasy, and as we know, knobs come in all shapes and sizes. And where there is one knob, there could potentially be more. We don't know whether the potential of a Dirty Dave Dennis or a sensational Simon Durden might be around the corner, or even someone who has a loose affiliation with them in Eddie Kenway, who himself will be in action in what is, some people might look at this and think this could be the show stealer right here. A 6-pack challenge, elimination style, for the right to be the #1 contender for the IWE UK National Championship, which is held currently by Damien. So some might argue that winning this match isn't necessarily a reward. I wouldn't call it a reward.
It's that classic, is it a blessing or is it a curse? You know, if you fight your way through 5 other men, knowing that down the line, literally the gates of hell are waiting to open to swallow you alive.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the men in this match, because this is going to be a hard-hitting match. It's going to be a heavyweight match as well. I really hope they've reinforced the ring for this one. That's for sure.
Yes, there is quite a lot of meaty hoss slapping around within this ring. Not to mention 1 or 2 individuals who potentially could be the big, bright future of our industry and what we do. So the 6 men involved will, of course, be Eddie Kenway, as we've mentioned. Johnny Royal. IWE fans will be familiar with this individual. He is somebody who has wrestled there in the past. Doesn't tend to work in too many other places from what we can see. So it'd be interesting to see how that affects his performance. Maverick Blade, another one, same kind of ilk, somebody well known. Did, however, wrestle last time around against Johnny Storm at IWE Resurrection. Put in an excellent effort, almost got the win with some nefarious tactics. But of course, the wily veteran is Johnny Storm, came out on top there as well. We have Scott Jones representing ACW as well. Scott Jones is magnificent. We'll get on to him a little bit more as we break down the competitors. We have, of course, my vaunted friend and enemy, Mr. Potato Head himself, Robbie Nitro, representing CWP. And then we have probably the biggest name. I think it's fair to say this is the biggest name in this match, and it's definitely the one that carries the most gravitas in our industry. Kelly Six, the incredible journeyman and highly touted wrestler that has worked all over the country, all over Europe, I believe, in some places at least. Very popular, very, very adept. Who stands out most here as the potential to be the next #1 contender in your mind?
Well, as you say, it's interesting because there are people of all different shapes and sizes and all different styles in there.
And all types of vegetables as well.
I've got to talk, though, about Kelly Six, because this is a guy that I've known for a long time. I first met him at Kapow Wrestling and then through to RCWA. I followed his career as he was a part of What Culture Pro Wrestling that became Defiant Wrestling. He was a champion there. And this is a guy who has gone through a metamorphosis over the years. And I'm going to throw my hands up. You know, he'll admit it himself. Over lockdown, he put on some timber. We all did. But what he's come out the other side being is a totally different wrestler. Before lockdown, he was still the king of performance. He was a guy that was on the cusp of greatness, but never quite took that next step. But after the lockdown has happened, he's got a totally new mindset. He refers to himself as the hybrid. He's gone from being a pretty boy high flyer to a full-on heavyweight contender now. He almost has got a kind of a, dare I say, almost a Samoa Joe vibe to him. He uses a lot of suplexes, he uses a lot of power moves, but he can still come off the top rope if he needs to. If you haven't been following him on Instagram, check him out because his workout regimes are unbelievable. The things that he's been doing with leaping and drop downs and working with heavy bags and medicine balls, it's kind of a CrossFit style. And he's totally changed his way of being. I don't think of him now as a pretty boy high flyer. I think of him at his most dangerous he's been.
Yeah, I like Kelly Six a lot. And it's hard to look past him when you look at the lineup of talent here. This is a real offender's row of talent in many ways. But what really stands out to me is the unique diversity of this 6-pack. You know, the most famous 6-pack that you'll probably remember quite well yourself is the one that obviously, you know, was in WWF with the British Bulldog, and we had The Rock and Austin, and you just think, okay, these were all men that kind of had similar styles with different personalities. These guys are so different from everyone else in that match. Like Scott Jones, for instance, I liken him to in some ways, another, I don't want to say a modern Noam Dar, because Noam Dar is like still young as hell. Like
he's in his prime right now in WWE NXT UK. Yeah.
Scott Jones has been on fire. The last 2 shows for ACW, he's worked Eddie Ryan, the Lion, of course, and he's wrestled Joel Redman. These are 2 of the best wrestlers and the most well-respected wrestlers in the UK. He's gone toe-to-toe with both. And even though he came out with a losing effort on both ends, no shame in losing to two of the very best in the world. So that's not something that should deter him going forward. But his athleticism, his youth, and his attitude and his arrogance as well, which I personally enjoy, it again is why he gets likened to a no-ender. And of course, being Scottish as well, having a real distaste towards the English in general, I always find quite amusing too, I guess. I have it on good authority that Rob Connor, the MMA specialist and MMA star who's currently out in Korea, is a huge fan of his as well. I like the look of Scott Jones. I think he's got an X factor in this match because he's got the talent, but he's also the least known. Nobody in this match knows who he is, really. Nobody's had a chance to work with him. Nobody's had a chance to scout him either. But then we've got on the back end of things, familiar faces. Robbie Nitro, Eddie Kenway, two people we know well from CWP. You got to feel that Eddie Kenway is going to enforce and really pursue aggression here and look to just cause a lot of damage and just basically brutalize his way to the finishing line.
You got to bear in mind that this is an elimination match. This isn't a one and done. This is a match that's going to keep on going. You know, I see this being a 20, 30, maybe even 40-minute match. Yeah. Has Eddie Kenway got the gas tank? Has he got the stamina to maintain? Sure, he can come out and he can hit hard and he can hit fast, but can he maintain that all the way through? Now, the funny thing about Robbie Nitro is Robbie Nitro, for me, he's got that almost big daddy kind of mentality. He comes out, he's wearing the red, white, and blue, he's sporting the flag, and he instantly is drawn in with the fans. The fans love Robbie Nitro. He's got that sort of intangible quality of being a fan favorite. And maybe that kind of crowd reaction could be what drives him forward. Maybe all the way to the final two. We shall see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like Robbie Nitro. People know that. I have quite a bit of disdain for him at this point. There's been comments made, but I am a professional. And I have said on several occasions, I actually think we've seen a better Robbie Nitro, particularly since his appearance at CWP. He knocked off Jackson Arrow, who everyone can agree, if they've seen him from Outcast Pro Wrestling, is a very exciting and very capable individual who is already embroiled in a heavyweight title affair for his own company. And then, of course, he goes to ACW. He's got a brand new tag partner. Some might say it's a big upgrade. I certainly would. In obviously Johnny Rocket, Buff Daddy. And now they're part of Buff Nation. Is Buff Daddy going to make an appearance? We don't know. He seems very keen to have Robbie's back, which is something you couldn't really say about his last partner. So he does have potential. And like you say, he can draw energy from the crowd because people like myself have been very detrimentally aggressive towards Robbie Nitro in our opinions of him. But the one thing I will say is that kind of energy, that uplifting from the audience, some of us don't need it personally, but at the same time, it can offer a real lift. And we've seen great wrestlers rise above even the hardest of tasks using the energy of the crowd. Someone like Rey Mysterio is a really good example of that. It'll be interesting to see whether he can do that. And then we've got kind of the X factors as well. We've got Johnny Raw and Maverick Blade, who are well known to IWE, but nowhere else. But that might play to their favor because they're on home territory. They're in comfort zones. Maverick Blade has already wrestled in this very same area, the same hall at the Last Shot Resurrection. He might be well suited to this. And he's another one where, because he doesn't wrestle in too many other places, you might be mistaken for not taking him as seriously. And that is very dangerous when you've got 5 men around you running around doing all kinds of crazy things. He could end up, and also he is a man who likes the use of a foreign object as well. And it's going to be very hard for one official to be able to keep up with what's going to happen in this match.
Because, of course, you know, it is a six-pack challenge. It's still going to have that sort of triple threat, fatal four-way kind of rules. Anything goes. But, you know, elimination style. We will keep whittling down until we find a new #1 contender who will go on to face Damien. Good luck to them.
Yeah, I mean, normally I like an opportunity to get in there and mix it up with people, but when somebody tells me that the finishing line is a date with the demon of the depths of hell, not really my cup of tea, if I'm being honest. I've already faced that physicality, and that was only briefly in a Royal Rumble. If he had my full attention and I had his full attention, that would be a recipe for disaster. And I think a lot of people would agree with me there. Let's shift gears a little bit. We've got some fantastic women's action here. Now, we also have the appearance of Riley Daniels. We don't know what she's going to talk about, but she has said that she will be there. Riley Daniels is, of course, the reigning and defending IWE Women's Champion. We don't know quite what she has to say to the audience, but she will be live in person with the belt, and she definitely has something to say. And no doubt she'll be zoned right in on this match, because a number one contenders match for the Women's Championship, we have Darcy Stone versus the Empress of the Dragons, you know, the woman who has 1,000 masks and 1,000 holds to match Mia Cortez. This is going to be a chance for you, especially, and for a large amount of this audience. It's going to be their first chance to get a real exposure of these two women who, in my opinion, have the potential to be the biggest stars. I feel like Mia Cortez, right? I'm a huge fan of Mia Cortez. I think that personally, as somebody who I've personally worked with and professionally, she is unbelievably under the radar, despite the fact she works everywhere, holds a multitude of titles, has been engaging in tag team warfare with men and women up north as well. She's going to be working for Phenomenal Elite Wrestling. She's going to be working with Rumble. She's actually just worked for Rumble on shows that I was on right before this show. She is seasoned. She works every weekend. She is in demand, and she works a multitude of companies, countless to talk about. Is Darcy Stone, who seems to be a little bit more located in a certain region, is she going to have the wherewithal and the veteran leadership to displace somebody like Mia Cortez?
I've got to say, I haven't had a chance to see either of these women live in the ring. I've seen some of their footage online. And one of the things I'm getting from Darcy Stone is she's got a very bubbly personality. She's got a very kind of bright and breezy character. She kind of reminds me almost like of a Bailey type character, where she's got that instant fan reaction. And again, it's like what we were saying with Robbie Nitro. If you can go out there and the fans are on your side from the very beginning, you know, it fires you up. And maybe, you know, that kind of fire is what's needed to go against the fire of the dragon, so to speak. As we've talked about on previous podcasts, so much of British women's wrestling has been swept up by WWE. They've all been taken to the Performance Centre in London. It's actually an opportunity for new young talent to break through. Ones that, you know, maybe they're just coming up through the ranks and they didn't have a chance to get their moment in the spotlight. This is their chance to shine. And you know, knowing that the reigning champion will be in the house, I think that puts the pressure on even further, because, you know, you're not just worried about your opponent, you're also worried about the champion who has got their eyes on your every move.
Yeah, what interests me about this match is the fact that these are two, arguably the best two women to duke it out for the right to be the number one contenders. Mia Cortez was at the last show, IWE Resurrection. She faced Riley Daniels for the women's title. Unfortunately, just made that one mistake and was caught lacking. It was a bit of a cheeky roll up. It was a bit of a nefarious roll up, if we're being honest. Looked like there was a hand of the tights, you know. So Mia Cortez. But what's interesting about Mia Cortez is that kind of almost schizophrenic nature of her persona, because she uses these dragons masks and she takes and draws power from them. And people might sort of turn their nose up at it, but we all remember what The Undertaker was like with the famous urn. He would draw power, he would draw strength, and it seemed to make him unstoppable. And she's able to draw different elements, different personality traits, different kind of mental weaponry from each of these masks. And you never know which mask she's going to wear to ringside. And it's normally an indication of what kind of Mia Cortez we're going to see. Are we going to see someone with a lot more aggression? Are we going to see someone a bit more tactical, a bit more wily? There's a lot of variations there. And again, Darcy Stone, very beautiful, very bubbly, a very infectious personality. How well is she going to be able to adapt to that? Not knowing what Mia Cortez may come through the curtain and what Mia Cortez is going to be, you know, forced and thrust upon her in the throes of battle. Interesting matchup. But again, like you've mentioned, so many women's wrestlers swept up by WWE NXT UK. But the wheel keeps moving. It keeps churning. The factory keeps pushing out these amazing talents. And these women, these aren't rookies. These are women who know what they're doing, especially in Mia Cortez. This is a seasoned veteran who, for some reason, hasn't been swept up by that system. And that means good news for anyone who's sensible enough to buy a ticket. And of course, there are still a limited amount of tickets available for this show. We switch gears again to the men's, and we have a very fantastic exhibition here. Someone you'll know very well, the Man of Steel MOS, and he'll be facing Rise Underground superstar, megastar, charismatic enigma of his own, Leonardo Darwin, who is unhinged in his creative lunacy. Are you excited for this one?
I genuinely am. Firstly, it's going to be a proper heavyweight clash. Two, these are guys you put on a poster and they draw attention. You've got Darwin, who is he's his own man. He thinks he's this insatiable stud muffin that all the women want. Totally up his own ego. And I've seen some of the matches he's had in Rise Underground with Big Effin' Joe. He's a guy that's prepared to do some nefarious tactics to win out in the end. But then you've got the Man of Steel, who I've worked with many times in RCWA. He is absolutely chiseled out of stone. He is absolutely shredded. Powerhouse wrestler, high-flying wrestler, one of the most athletic men I think I have seen in British wrestling. And again, hugely underrated. Doesn't wrestle very far outside of that sort of Essex scene. And I think this is a guy who could be a top star up and down the country because he just looks so good and he moves so good and he's a charismatic guy. So yeah, MOS, the Man of Steel, against this golden god. I think this is going to be a fascinating watch. Genuinely fascinating.
There's a level of charisma on this show that is really not getting the appreciation it deserves. We've spoken about Ebenezer the Geezer versus Danny Disorder, two unbelievable charismatic juggernauts of what they do. But on the flip side of things, we have MOS. I haven't met MOS from a character standpoint. I've only seen him work as a wrestler. So I'm not sure what his personality is going to be like for this. He seems slightly more understated than Darwin, but then aren't we all? Like, nobody is touching this. He is unhinged. He is absolutely bat excrement crazy. And I love that because he is so undeniably talented with it. You have no idea what's coming at you. But of course, MOS, as soon as I hear RCWA, Essex got a very rich kind of history of its own. I've seen the amount of talent that operates and works around that kind of region. And every single person that rolls through that promotion is a seasoned, chiseled veteran, so to speak. And obviously, MOS has been mixing up with a number of these individuals, which means that he knows how to work with high-end clientele, high-end talents, and he knows how to fight too. He's going to need that because Leonardo Darwin is utterly insane. Do you hazard a guess as to who might potentially come out of this one with the win? Because they're probably going to be in the mix as well for that number one contendership alongside the person who wins the six-pack challenge.
Well, as I've said with MOS, he's a very, very athletic guy, but he's a super good guy. He's a clean guy. And maybe it is the dirty dealings of Darwin that cause the victory in the end. We shall see.
It's very succinctly and very well said. I'm excited about that match. I genuinely would say to people who maybe are coming to the show but don't necessarily know these two because they haven't featured in IWE before, these are two talents that I think by the end of the night, you are genuinely going to want to talk about for a long time, and you're going to want to check out more of their work. And of course, IWE has the potential to bring them back in, which is why it's a very good reason to support the independent wrestling, particularly if it's localized like an independent wrestling elite. And that obviously leaves just one match. We don't know whether it'll be the main event or not, could potentially be. Now, obviously, originally this match, as you'll know, you've seen the graphics, the fans have, yourself, Mr. Martin Rowe, you've seen it as well. It was meant to be a triple threat, no disqualification, tag team title match. The Good Goth Almighty experience that is, of course, Frankie T, the Urban Goth, and, of course, Goth Daddy himself, Xander. They were going to defend the IWE Tag Team Championships against Tight Grip and Year Zero. Now, unfortunately, Morgan Black of Tight Grip has suffered an injury, and pretty much concurrent with that, so has Kevin Isaac, who of course belongs to Year Zero. So that means that tag team wise, they couldn't compete. That left us in a hole. Well, it left IWE in a hole. And they have opted to go down the open challenge route. So there will still be a tag title match. We just don't know who the opponents for Good Goth Almighty will be. First of all, obviously, condolences to Morgan Black and Kevin Isaac. Get well soon. We have been informed they will be given tag team title shots when they are fit and raring to go. So look out for that on the social media platforms. They will have their opportunities at the tag titles at a later show and a later date that is yet to be announced. However, you know, as they say in the NFL, next man up. Who could potentially step in as the open challenge? And also, do you think that maybe Good God Almighty might have given themselves a little bit more work here? Because instead of knowing who they're going to be planning for, this could open the door to anyone, and they're not going to know until the day.
It's a tricky one. Obviously, you know, we say in this business, it's not ballet, injuries happen. So, you know, as we say, condolences to those guys. Hopefully you will come back stronger very soon. But I actually think for Good Goth Almighty, this is going to be a bonus, because before it was going to be triple threat rules. It was going to be tornado tag, anything goes. Now we're back to a standard one team on one team, 2-on-2 tag team match, you know, one fall to a finish. So in theory, you know, the toys aren't going to come into play. The tables, the chairs, those are off the table, which means we're going to have, you know, a very straightforward match. But of course, they don't have the benefit of knowing who their opponents are going to be.
Yeah, I think it's yeah, I gotta say, questionable. I know they're, you know, the good guys. They might dress differently. They might have different makeup. There's somewhat of a Darby Allin kind of nature about them, you know, very quiet, very unassuming, but obviously very alternative. And they seem to be very confident. They have to be to put out an open challenge. But it is also worth pointing out, although they've held the belts for 2.5 years, they've never had the ability to defend them. Obviously, COVID doesn't help. And Xander, of course, was away, wasn't available at the last show. So Frankie T going it alone, trying to capture the, you know, the UK National Championship from Damien, and surprise, surprise, unsuccessfully, because nobody beats the Demon. And of course, ironically enough, there's a lot of culture clash here, because Xander, of course, is part of the Demon Death Squad, involving Damien as well. He works in other promotions. Now, the Demon Death Squad haven't made themselves known to IWE as of yet. Basically because Damien doesn't think he needs the backup, I'm assuming, and he proved that right when he demolished Frankie T at Resurrection. But like I've said, no tag team title defenses until now. Your first defense will be an open challenge against an unknown opponent. That, to me, screams of danger. But you have pointed out the X factor. That is the obviously the champion's advantage. No longer a no DQ match, just a straight one fall to a finish match. Disqualifications in play, countouts in play. Not saying that obviously Good God Almighty would want to take the cheap route. However, if the opposition happens to be just that little bit too violent for whatever reason, they could end up bending the rules too far, could get disqualified, and the champion's advantage could be in effect. Who would you like to see them face?
It's a really tricky one, because obviously we know that the Essex area is a hotbed of wrestling action. There are some great companies in that area, some really good wrestling schools nearby. I mean, Essex isn't that far from London, so you've got all of that London crowd that can very easily make their way up to Essex. Big companies like RCWA have had, you know, worldwide superstars. You know, the likes of Kip Sabian and Will Ospreay have come up through those ranks. So there's a lot of potential challenges. And the problem is, because it's such a wide, you know, net, it's literally an infinite number of teams could walk through the doors. Good God Almighty don't know what sort of wrestlers they're going to be facing. Are they going to be facing a pair of big bruisers? They're going to be pairing a face of young cruiserweights. And to be honest, for the fans, that's great, because, you know, they might get to see a new team that they've never seen before, and it could be something really special, and indeed an upset. We could have new tag team champions.
Yeah, and the thing is as well, we don't know whether they're going to turn up on the day. Are they going to announce themselves prior? Maybe they want to, you know, kind of strike fear into their opponents quickly. If we look for instance, if we have a more heavyweight tag team, someone with a bit more of a vicious side to them, they might want to announce their intentions early doors so that they can come in and really unsettle things. But we might have somebody a little bit more sneaky. They might just wait until the bell rings and then make their presence felt. That's the great thing about wrestling. You know, you've got to buy a ticket to find out. Obviously, if we do find out before then, I'm sure it will be posted on social media. I'm sure there will be a rebuttal. There will be a response to said open challenge. Me personally, it's a little bit disappointing, because both members of the Knobs, of course, that we love so much, are going to be in different matches. Obviously, Ebenezer's facing Danny Disorder. Eddie Kenway's in that six-pack challenge for a chance to become #1 contender. But, you know, they are on site, and you never know. And like we say, you know, we mentioned during their matches when we spoke about those, Knobs traveling packs, you know, and that, you know, Dirty Dave Dennis and Sensational Simon could be somewhere in the vicinity. There's nothing stopping them cashing. Also, open challenge. Does that mean it's just one team? Could it potentially be another? We don't know. Maybe we might end up with a triple threat, in which case the dynamic then changes again. And of course, the no disqualification thing doesn't necessarily come into play, or does come into play, depending on the amount of opponents. So it's an open-ender. It really is. It's a difficult one to discuss. So we don't know really. And obviously we don't have the list in terms of the match listing. Who's going to go out first? You know, it's going to be pot luck. You're only going to find out if you buy a ticket. And of course, if you want to buy a ticket, check out the QR code on the screen. If you don't have the technology to do so, don't worry about it. Check out the description below. There is a link to the tickets. And of course, if you access social media at IWE UK across all social media platforms, you'll also find all the details you need to acquire your tickets for this Saturday's event. It's February 19th. It's Writtle Sports and Leisure Centre in Essex. It's in the Chelmsford region, ladies and gentlemen. Don't be confused. Writtle is kind of like a sort of sub-borough of Chelmsford, so it's quite easy to find. It's within that kind of area. Obviously, the postcode is available as well. All the details below you on the screen right now. And the show will start at, I believe, a prompt 6 p.m. So that is obviously very important to notice, but doors will open obviously about half an hour before that. So if you want to get a good seat, get down there nice and early, because tickets have sold well and they are limited in terms of availability. Just one more thing to ask, really, Magic Martin Rowe. Are you excited about your debut for IWE this weekend?
I really am. In my opinion, it's a stacked card. It's a real mix of talents. There really is something for everybody. And if you haven't been to see a live wrestling show before, it's a completely different experience to what you've seen on the TV. It's a much smaller, more intimate experience, but you are so close to the ring. Every bump, every bruise, you will hear it, you will feel it. It's a visceral experience. And, you know, the people that come through that curtain, you may have never seen them before. You may never see them again, but you never know. You could be looking at the future stars of world wrestling.
Yeah, you won't always get the production value per se, but this is grassroots football in wrestling. This is how I equate it as a grassroots football fan. Yeah, sure, you can watch the big shiny production, you can spend crazy amounts of money, but don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, you know, including a booking fee, you're looking at a maximum of £12 to come and attend this show, and it's going to be much cheaper for your children. And there is, of course, discounts available for families of 4 as well, which is very cool to see. And that's something that isn't necessarily afforded to you when you go and watch the big time, when you go and watch a WWE or even an AEW, which I've attended as well. You know, tickets are very high for that, with good reason for what you get. But this is a much more visceral, close-up experience. Like Martin Rose says, you're right in there with the action, and particularly when it comes to ladder matches and matches that involve weapons and no disqualification and things like that, you're likely going to have a wrestler in your lap if you dare choose to sit in the front row or anywhere near the front, for that matter, as you've seen in past experiences with shows that me and Martin have been a part of. So, like I've said, all the details are in the descriptions below. But that just leaves us to say, if you are coming to the show, have a wonderful time. And if you're on the fence, hopefully this preview has given you enough incentive to buy a ticket and come down and support local independent wrestling in the Essex region, because it's one of the best regions in the country to watch British independent wrestling. From myself, Aeron, and from Magic Martin Rowe, thank you very much for watching. And we will catch you very soon, because we'll be reviewing all the action from IWE Valentine Violence this weekend.